Why don't we take some questions from the audience?
Hello. Hi. I am Jose Tapia, here in Drexel in the Department of Politics. I have a question for Matthew Hauer about the projections of rise of sea level. You gave a range of projections for the end of the century, and I am not sure if any of them include events like the melting of the Greenland cap of ice and the Antarctic ice cap, or are they just based in the regular rise of the sea that has been going on without occurring this kind of catastrophic events? Because my understanding is that if any of these catastrophic events occur, the rise of the sea level could be tens of feet, like 30, 40, 50 feet, or even more in a few decades. So I would like to know about that.
So yes, essentially the sea level rise, the physical modeling does account for ice sheet instability and so on. That's what's driven the curves to continue to go up as opposed to down. That these extreme scenarios are much more likely, given the most recent research in the last 3 years than in the last 5 or 7 or 10 years. So yeah, they definitely do account for that. Most of the modeling, though, for ice sheet instability suggests that will be in the 22nd century and onward, as opposed to in the 21st. At least that's my interpretation of the oceanographers that I talked to.
Thanks for a terrific panel. David Berrigan, NCI. A question for Dr. Abraido-Lanza. I feel like in the public health literature, a lot of writing about acculturation has been sort of unidirectional. You know, people come from abroad and change to be more like the U.S. But I wonder if there's more of a sociological or other literature that I'm missing that kinds of thinks of it as a interaction where immigrants themselves change, but also change their context. And certainly with Latino immigrants, I feel like there's a growing presence in pop culture and in the structural environment. So could you comment on that?
Yes, absolutely. There is in the acculturation literature the assumption that acculturation goes in that one way, and there's not a lot of work that looks at it the other way around. The influence of Latinos in certain areas, in the United States in general, how things as simple as food preferences, fast food establishments, attitudes, values related to family and well-being. There's not a lot of work going that way. And the other thing that I'm just so fascinated with, and my colleagues who are anthropologists actually hate the concept of acculturation. What is American culture anyway? Like, what does that mean to become Americanized? I think, having worked in this area for a while, I get asked a lot, well, what acculturation measure should I use? And I am coming to the conclusion that if you're interested in learning about acculturation and studying it, if you are interested in studying norms and values, then measure norms and values. If you're interested in studying worldviews, then measure the worldviews. And this literature has been dominated, and I'm guilty of it too, by quantitative assessments. I think we need to start taking a really good look at how we're measuring acculturation. I am becoming more and more convinced that things like life history methods, qualitative methods, big data methods might be a way of capturing some of this. So big data might be some of the things we've learned about during these 2 days. Tweets, which I know nothing about. Twittering, tweets. I don't do this. So what does this say about national views, Latinos versus other. I just think there's so many innovative things that we could be thinking about when we're measuring acculturation, and the back and forth that you just mentioned. There's a lot more to be work to be done in that area.
Over there.
Hi, Newport Charter at the New York State Health Foundation. Just to follow up on that conversation, and I'm thinking actually about the panel that we had before, and specifically Joanna's experience at the Center for Actor Design, and how it took 10 years to get developers excited and interested and engaged about health as a profitable thing for them. I'm curious as to how you would sell maintaining neighborhoods and maintaining those networks to developers and landlords. Because at this point, there's no financial interest for them to keep neighborhoods together. And I think that we've talked a lot about at this conference in terms of how public health information and data should be a bridge builder to policymakers and to other fields. And so I'm curious as to how you would frame it to a developer or a landlord to say this is important, other than it's the right thing to do.
I'm going to answer, although I don't really work on the area of urban design precisely, but I'm thinking one, I guess, overriding theme here is data. Data have a lot of power, and some of the data that Joanna was talking about, I think it really reminds us that developers may listen to what might indicate that people want more of, and perhaps incorporating questions regarding what, especially millennials and the younger generations who will be buying homes at some point, want of a community. I think I have the sense that, particularly for urban populations, there is a desire for more diversity, and that many people move to cities and particular neighborhoods because they look for that diversity, ethnic, racial, and in many other ways. So perhaps, having some hard data, and there might be out there, and showing it to developers might be a way to really maintain, support, and promote those kind of enclaves.
I would say that if you think about the demographic shifts in the United States, Latinos are now the large, and forgive me, again, you see I'm a little bit old-fashioned. I don't know about tweeting. I keep saying Latinos. I know Latinx is another form of referring to the population. The group that we're talking about is the largest, quote, minority group in the United States right now. There's strength in numbers. If you think about the political power of groups that are growing in the United States, community-based organizations that have political power, district, getting groups together to define what districts are, and mortgages. There are groups. People here could talk a lot more about this. I think there is a lot in community organization and empowerment that we could look at in terms of developing policies that real estates and others would be interested in investing in. And I was so inspired by so many of the talks here, not the least of which was the idea that I think millennials are so social justice oriented. I think the future is really bright, despite some of the horrible, evil things that are happening in this country. I am so inspired by the youth and the people that we know about millennials. There's evidence that demonstrates that millennials are very interested in causes. They are less tied to loyalty to organizations. They are tied to causes. So I think if we use these social justice frameworks and use that language, the real estate market, people that are interested in commercialization of culture, millennials might be the way to go. Mm-hmm.
So please join me in thanking our last panel.